confident that we've got this.
Here we go.
I can hear my voice echoing back.
Okay. Just make sure you can hear me. We're going live in about 2 seconds here. All right. So I think we're back now. We're back with Phil Day. I want to thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully, Phil can hear me. I know I can hear him. Phil, are you able to hear me on the stream, I hope?
Yeah, I'll hear you for.
All right. Are we all ready to go?
I'm ready to go. So,
All right.
I can hear my voice echoing.
Yeah, you should be able to hear me now.
Yeah, and I've just got a message coming in saying we can go live in 2 minutes. So, I suppose we just wait 2 minutes, do we?
No. I already did it. It's 39 seconds in. I just shared the new link. I had to post a new video. That's all.
All right. So, where's the new link on yours?
Yeah, it's on my wall.
It's on your wall. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So.
Everything should be good now. The audio should be good. The clarity should be good. They should be able to hear your voice. They should be able to hear my voice. There should be no more issues. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess the title makes it true. No bullshit.
Yeah. So I can't hear my voice echoing back, so that's a good thing. So I think we'll just wait until we make sure we get confirmation that the audio is good.
Yeah.
There's no.
Well, get somebody you can trust to confirm that. So.
Yeah. No, someone I can trust, and everything they've said has confirmed the problems because we found them.
Okay. So it looks like we're live. I want to welcome everybody back, including Phil Day, for his patience and understanding. So, Phil, let's take it from the top.
It's like we're doing a play now.
Yeah.
So I'll keep this brief, and I'll just try and sum up where we got to maybe a little bit. So originally I just started saying how I'm very unfamiliar with the NES. I've never held an NES controller. I've never played an NES game. I played them on the arcade versions, of course, or other ports or something, but never on the NES. Which is why it led me to talk to Rudy J. Ferretti. He entered the leaderboards for competitive gaming as early as 2002, well before it became well known through various films that we know of, like Chasing Ghosts and, of course, King of Kong. And Rudy was talking earlier about how different the culture was back then. It was much more friendlier and easygoing. And I was saying, well, that's often the case with competitive gaming.
Right.
Or any, not competitive game, but general competitions. Could be chess or Grand Prix racing or any football code. You get, often you have rivalries, which you need for a competition. You have to have someone to rival. And often you can form a nemesis, and there's friendly rivalry. That's really healthy, that person there. But often that can become enemies. And that's where it starts to get a little nasty. Anyway, just got confirmation that audio is perfect, so we're good to go.
Okay. You might want to, can you mute those audios so it doesn't come through the stream? That's going to annoy people. Yeah. So yeah.
So anyway, that's where we sort of got to, Rudy. So and then we'll sort of pick up where the point you were saying was, I was curious about when you first entered. So we'll probably start there. When you first entered with some, I think you were saying it might have been a speed run, early speed run games. Like it was becoming popular to do speed runs back in 2002, and that's some of the earlier tracks you competed on. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I ran into a bunch of different tracks, and that's the thing, that's what separated me from, like I said, when I called myself the greatest versus the best. I didn't have to play for a zillion hours a day to get good at one game, and I played so many different games, and then people said, well, there wasn't a lot of competitors, and I told people to their faces, that's a cop-out. You don't play the games I play. It's not about me holding the most maximum scores on the NES. It's not about my all-amazing, unprecedented accomplishments, my bold projections, how long I've been around. It's all of those things combined, and, of course, playing against the best and beating the best. And, Tom Batava was a big reason. He's the only person that's worth mentioning, unlike the other people that are irrelevant and not worth mentioning in here. But Tom Batava was a big inspiration for me because him and I were both very equal. He had some amazing accomplishments that were one of a kind and unique. I had amazing accomplishments that were one of a kind and unique. We went back and forth. We beat each other. He was around a little bit before me in the competitive field. I don't know if he had been gaming as long as I have overall. I can never say for sure. It's all about speculation, like you said, comparing the best and the worst, et cetera, et cetera. But the people, as you can see, that say they're better than me, they've done things better, they've done great things, they have no proof of it. You know, it's almost like everybody has the same thing in common. They got no proof of it, then they say they didn't want to do it. I don't play games that nobody cares about. It's just a cop-out. And, you know, that's the type of stuff, that's the issues with this gaming scene today. But years ago, it wasn't like that. It was fun. We used to shop. We used to go out and, you know, trade and go over people's houses and play and do tournaments and stuff. And it didn't matter who won or lost, you know. It was just good old clean fun. And then, unfortunately, everything changed.
Yeah, I think there's a few things there I just want to point out. Like when you said you claim to be the world's greatest, that was someone else who gave you that title, wasn't it? It wasn't something you declared upon yourself. Not that it really matters too much. Like but it was other people it was someone else who originally made that point, wasn't it?
It was, but the truth is, when you look at my whole, you know, Colassio colorful, you know, records, scores, accomplishments, I've done more collectively than any gamer has ever in gaming history, including anybody that claims themselves to be of merit. If you look at even a whole entire, you know, cult of people that have supposedly done all crazy accomplishments, nobody's even comparable. You know, there's a lot of gamers that do one great accomplishment or a couple of great accomplishments, you know, but I've done hundreds and hundreds of games and so many different accomplishments. It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, holding the longest title on a console, and not just one console. The NES is one of my favorites, but I hold records and held records on some of the top selling games of all time on multiple consoles, still do on a couple to this day, and, you know, almost 40 years old, being kind of basically retired, unlike the others, I don't have to practice. I could come out tomorrow and play a game that I was the best at, for instance, Splatterhouse, and beat the top score of so-called 742, you know, 742K. It won't be a problem for me because that's just something I have. It's a gift. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. I think before we get too far along, I just want to ask you a few things, just going back, and I'll come back to all these points as well, and we'll go into in more detail. But
yeah,
early on just now, you were saying that you want to talk about, you mentioned Tom Batava, because you see him as he was an equal. He was someone you were competing against. You were trading scores. He had world records or max out scores, accomplishments on titles that you weren't playing, and vice versa. But there were ones where you overcrossed, and you said other people weren't worth mentioning. I mean, I think this is important to clarify. Like, when you mean not worth mentioning, you mean not worth mentioning in the realm of your interest in this large collection of achievements. Like, there's plenty of console players out there would be worth mentioning on individual tracks, or, you know, because there are going to be people who have got the world record on Ghosts and Goblins, for instance. So they, of course, are worth mentioning in that single track alone. But you're talking about in the realm of.
I'm talking about casual daily buzzer gamers, wannabe, you know, Rudy J. Ferretti gamers, people that claim that they're the best, claim they're better than me, don't have any scores to show for it, don't have any history to show for it. All they do is, you know, they flap their gums, per se, and it's a cop-out. Anybody could say you're better than Rudy J. Ferretti. I also can say that I was better than Michael Jordan, but I never joined the NBA. It's how can I put this nicely to keep it professional? It's ignorance. You know, anybody could say that they're better than the best. Until they beat the best, they're not the best.
Yeah, I think it's true. Like, you could easily say I could run a marathon. I mean, my legs work. I just put one foot in the other and keep doing it.
Right.
You've actually got to do it. And it's a certain physical a certain physical fitness and also mental discipline. Like, I know people who run marathons, and it's an achievement just to run one. And so whether you finish first or last in a marathon, the thing is you ran it. And there's people who've run, you know, and there's people who might have run the London, the Tokyo, the New York, the Boston, the Great Open Road one here in Australia, the Sydney Marathon, you know, the Great Wall of China Marathon, and they're all marathons, and some might be a bit harder than others, because like the Great Wall of China one, because of all its steps, it's going to be very grueling. Some are more pleasant, psychological, like the Great Ocean Road one in Australia, because the scenery is meant to be quite, you know, being down there, it's meant to be pleasant, and keep you going. But ultimately, you still have to do it. You know, it's easy to say, I could do that. Now, the thing about the consoles, before we start getting into tracks, because I want to talk about the ones you're most proud of or feel that are of interest to you, is that there are so many games out there. I was looking at a website recently, and it's just someone on their own interest trying to track every game ever made or published, and it's already reached about 45,000 titles, and they haven't even included Pong yet. Like there's so many tracks, like so many titles there yet, so many. And the thing with the console players, competitive console players, they often have multiple scores. Like they'll have max out score the world records on a single title, for instance, because there's variations on that title. So it gets very difficult to sort through. But what I also noticed, Rudy, was doing a bit of research. Often, so for instance, if you listen to James Rolfe, the Angry Nintendo or the Angry Video Game,
yeah, he's one of my favorites. It's funny you mention him.
He's an entertaining guy.
He is,
and he approaches it with such enthusiasm and such humour. But behind all that, he does genuinely try and beat the game, and he does persist through the game. Now, whether he has producers' assistants or how he runs the show, I have no idea. And there's games you'll get to the end of, like Castlevania 3, which I know you've completed, which he just couldn't get past it. He never managed to figure it out. And the difference is he plays all these games, and he can give an assessment of which ones he feels personally are more difficult than others. But then you might talk to someone else, so that game's not so hard to get through once you know a few things here and there. But also the interesting thing is, when I went looking for the top 10 most difficult games, and ones that sort of come up often are Battletoads, Castlevania 3, Silver Surfer. There's various ones that come up again. Punch Out, Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, though, then you get people who start to rival against that, saying, "Oh, these ones aren't hard," like just in general internet chat, saying, "Oh, these ones aren't difficult. These are the difficult ones." So you get this kind of weird idea that which ones are difficult becomes quite subjective. And one of the ones on there that came up a few times that was saying this is a far more difficult game was Rygar. And I noticed that because I used to play the arcade one. I was very fond of that game as a teenager. And then I realised when I looked at these scores, and I'll mention a few names here, if you don't mind, but like Glenn Updike felt that your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 was a particularly brilliant score. He said that was a really outstanding score. And he also mentioned that Tom Batava felt that was one of his great achievements, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And no one, like another list, tends to mention it. He said, no, it's because maxing that score out is really difficult. And I think he said Tom Batava did it on one life. I'm not sure if you did it or not, like he didn't lose a life. But either way, he said maxing out that score is not an easy feat. So a lot of people know how to get to the end of the game. But to get these max out scores, have they tried yet? That's the thing I'm curious about, is that credit where it's due, like a perfect Pac-Man score.
Right.
I suppose it's largely academic now.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, that's the other thing. All the bold projections I made and did things that nobody else has ever done or even come close to, whether they claim they didn't want to do it or whatever, which, like I said, is all ignorance. But, it's funny that you mentioned about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, here's the difference. Yes, Tom Batava really loved that game, so he played his heart out in it. And not taking away from anything he did, I'm just saying he's the better person at that game than I am. Doesn't make him greatest over me as a gamer. It makes him the best at that game. And here's the reason why. He's done speed runs on that game. He's definitely practiced that game more than I have. I know because I've talked to him about how he plays, and he really does take games to master them. He practices them to a whole different level than I do. That's a fact. And like I said, not taking anything away from him, because I don't even know if I practiced it as much as he did, would I ever beat it without dying. The problem with that game is, the reason I never did beat that game without dying is because there are some issues sometimes when you're playing with the controller and trying to do your special move. It just sometimes doesn't fucking work. And that can cost you a life like that. So that's one of the reasons why I never maxed it out without dying. It's extremely impressive that you did it. I have not done it, but we both maxed it out, so that's how I look at it.
That was the point that Glenn Updike was making. Just maxing that score out was a real achievement. Just maxing the score out. So, and we all know that a little bit of luck in a video game can go a long way, and a little bit of bad luck can basically just be game over.
It sure can. It sure can.
I'll only mention the one title I know in detail, which is an arcade game, Galaga, and I know with that, where I've seen great games end very badly, and I've seen really poor starts turn really good. And you can have there's players there have had enormous runs, and if they had repeated those, they got 2 runs like that together, then they would have the world record. But you just can't rely on that. Like, things just happen. That's why people are drawn to these games to keep competing on them. Why they've held people's attention for some for nearly 4 decades, 3 decades, 2 decades.
Right.
Because they are genuine skill testers. So going back to these titles, because you mentioned Tom Batara, and he's an obvious person to talk about. He's clearly very talented or gifted or studious console player. And I generally suppose we're going to talk around the NES, because we could talk about other ones as well, but just generally around there. He has many titles on it, as you do. But both of you decided to sort of spread out and do various other tracks. Like you've done speed runs, marathons, you've done max out scores, taken world records, and it's not just that. It's the style of the game. It's not just a straight genre like shooters, but it's actually the style of the game, like the style of play. I mean, so it's marathons, and it is speed runs, and it is like looping games, like learning patterns and persisting with that. Why? No, there's no real answer to why, but what was it that wanted you to focus on, not focus, what was it that made you do so many games rather than focus on just a few and just really kind of push them to the limit? Was it an interest in yours to just try and capture as many scores as you liked, or it just came from the fact that you just enjoyed all those games and thought, I'll just pursue all of them?
No, that's what separated me from the rest. Instead of doing one game, and I don't need to mention the names of these games because they get ridiculous amounts of publicity. I'm glad you only mentioned Pac-Man, not the other ones. But these games get a ridiculous amount of publicity, and I wanted to do something different, which made me unique and made me the special console player of the century in many eyes. I wanted to take games that people weren't really into. They weren't that popular, and I wanted to turn them into a popular game, and I did that. I did that with many, many games, and that's why I have the most perfect scores. That's why I have the most universal collection of records, whether they're still first or last. What I wanted to do was I wanted to take games that people didn't respect because they figured, well, I'm only going to get fame if I play this game. Once again, it's all about if you do everything everybody else does, you're a copycat. If you do things that nobody else does, you're an outcast. So either way, you're fucked. So here's how I look at it, right? I figured, let me take games that I enjoy, that other people don't enjoy as much, and do something that nobody else has ever done. And I did that. I did movie video games. I did silly video games, children's type video games. And all these games had unique things to it. And I said, I want to be the best in the world at these games and max them all out, have the most max out scores on the NES, and I want to also be able to beat some of the best players. And I did that. I did it all. And including I did some unique accomplishments. So I just wanted to be different than everybody else. I didn't want to be, well, you have a record on this top game or that top game. But the truth is, I have had or hold world records, world titles, great scores, great accomplishments on top 5 seller video games on all kinds of consoles. People don't look at that because they just don't know. But it is a fact. So with that, that's why I did that. I wanted to be somebody different. I wanted to be Rudy J. Ferretti. I didn't want to be everybody else like everybody else that wants to be everybody else. Oh, he's the big name. He's the big name. She's the big name. No, I wanted to be me and only me. And I did that. That's what I did.
I think it's a valid point. I think that it is true that certain games get a lot of attention. I think there's lots of positives about that, but the negatives are that a lot of games get overlooked, and there are certainly a lot of great games out there that deserve more attention. I mentioned Ghosts and Goblins before. That's a very good game, but it's harder to sort of compete on, because of the picked on the arcade because of the scoring and that, I'm told. And there's games I think particularly difficult, like Paperboy and Crazy Climber, that don't get a lot of attention.
Right.
And I know that, and I mentioned another name here, Dwayne Richard is very similar in his outlook to games. He says there's lots of great games out there. He's a big fan of Turtles, so is John McNeil up in Brisbane. It's a game that doesn't get a lot of attention. People loathe it. I know Andrew Barrow recently took this world record on main for Astro Blaster. These are games that don't get much attention, but people find them enjoyable and they compete on them, put scores up, and hopefully draw more people to it. Now, I'll just say something quickly here. For instance, Ice Cold Beer. I was looking at this recently. A man by the name of Greg Grunter or Greg Gunter. It sounds
We're
like a
kind of.
name. I know.
I
It
don't
was
mean
the
to
only
interrupt, but
world
we're
record. It
yeah.
was the only world record on ice beer in 1983, and it didn't get beaten until Zach. I can't remember his name, but I met him in New Jersey in 2011. He took the world record on that. He was a very young boy at the time.
Right.
And since then, there's only been 2 scores put on ice cold beer, and they were both put on last year in 2018. Now, that means there's a leaderboard there. That game came out in 1983. It's only got 4 scores on it. Now, the reason I make this point is that in Brisbane at Pincadia, which is you'll hear more about Pincadia through the year, I'm sure, they held a tournament this year, and 30 people participated in that tournament. So these few scores that go up do draw attention to these games and bring about competition, which is much healthier. So, I mean, I think it is a positive to go out and play these games that deserve more attention. And to be, I think, if you are receiving critical interest on it,
I just didn't want to go off topic with arcade games. Remember, we weren't going to talk too much about that, but I get your point.
Yeah. My point is just to sort of talk about how you can draw attention by actually getting a score on top. There is merit in that. So on that though, like when you look at all those tracks that you have played, what are the ones that you're, I don't know if I want to, like you could say proud of, or the ones that you found most difficult and you managed to pull them off, or that you struggled to do and got there, or just ones that, because this is what I'm going to rely on you. Like I don't know some of the games. I know some of the games you played, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Jaws, of course, Splatterhouse and the arcade. But what were the ones that you're, I don't know, most fond of for whatever reason? The ones that you think people or that deserve some attention or just of interest, I guess.
Well, I think there's a special bond between me and the games I've played over the years, whether it's when I did it, how I did it, the type of game that it was, maybe something that nobody else ever played before, even doing an accomplishment that other people even, and this is good too. There's even games where people say nobody plays them or whatever. Nobody cares, but it's funny that when Rudy J. Ferretti plays them, everybody else wants to play them. And I can mention this because even though it's arcade, for instance, Splatterhouse, Splatterhouse was a worthless arcade board set before I started playing it in 2012. I'm the only person in history, ever gamer in history, which this is why I give myself that title besides people giving it to me of the greatest all-around console player of all time, player in general. I went on a radio station and made a bold claim that if you get me a Splatterhouse board, I will fly out to Denver, Colorado in 2012, and I will take the world record. Never played the game before, only played it on console. I did that. There was a lot of controversy with that and whatnot. We're not going to go into it. It's not worth mentioning because it's ancient history. But it took me 4 years to get that score back because I had to get a board and whatnot. That was pretty unique for me because that was a long journey. And now I own a board. I have an actual arcade stand-up. I don't sit like a console player when I play it. I play the game with the traditional way of playing it. That's what I paid fucking over $1,000 for. That's why I put that machine together, to do it right. Not to sit on my ass like a console player, which that's what console players do, which I am, and play a arcade machine as a console player on my little TV set and eat a TV dinner. It's just not something I'm going to do. But when you ask about what do I like and what do I enjoy, I think what's important to mention and what deserves the merit also are the max out scores of a whole. Perfect games like my fencing on Track and Field 2, looping Target Renegade on a single life, which is another thing that nobody's ever done on any arcade machine or console, 29 times on a single life. And I could have done more. Playing a marathon for 23 hours. I played another marathon for almost 6 hours on the Atari 2600. Rolling scores to 0, elevator action, for instance, making the game break down and freeze. And I'm known for that. That's another thing I'm known for that nobody else is known for. I'm known for taking games to the point of a kill screen. Besides Pac-Man, which was the only known kill screen, and one other game that we don't need to mention right now because it's arcade and it's so popular. But I took console games to those limits. I took something that nobody ever did. I took games that were on consoles to the limit of no return. I broke elevator action. I found a way to break the artificial intelligence. No other gamer in history ever did it. I broke, fencing in track and field, almost 14 years ago, track and field too, only one other person has tied me and even admitted it took him hundreds of tries to tie, you know? So I've taken games to the limit where they break. You know, I've had screens freeze with scores. You know, I've made scores go into asterisks. You know, I've done ridiculous things. You know, so it's hard to say what game, but if you wanted me to pick one that's really inspirational to me, probably was, and people will say, well, this is crazy, but really, Home Alone was a really big thing for me because at the time I wanted to do it, and when I did it, there was controversy involved, and there was ill doings by people not worth mentioning because they have no meaning to the scene. But I will say this: I went around those settings, did those settings, and still got the records back. So that's another thing that makes me a man.
What was the Home Alone? What was that? What did that game entail? Like what was it? Was it a marathon game, or was it a perfect score? Was it a max out score?
Well, it's funny, and this is the reason I talk about it. There were a lot of issues with Home Alone to begin with, not just from a standpoint of playing it and the issues in the game itself, but the manufacturers and the people that wrote the manuals and wrote all the other stuff about the game were totally dead fucking wrong, including Nintendo. So what happened was Nintendo Power Magazine had the right information, which I looked into, but the manual was really off. So when I was trying to figure out what a maximum score could be, it was very difficult. So I had to do my homework and I had to do the math, something that somebody else should have did, but they didn't do it. So I went into the game and I said, okay, this is what's possible. This is what can be done. So it was a really fun time for me. It was around the holidays, and I knew I was there. So I looked in the manual. I'm like, wait a minute. This friggin' point total doesn't fucking add up. This game doesn't do this. It's very unique. The manual for Home Alone is way the fuck off. And then if you look at the Nintendo Power Magazine, the one where it has all the information in it, because I had to call the 800 number, it's very different. It's the only game I've ever seen with such an issue in the manual versus the actual information. So the manual that you got with the box was printed big time wrong. Or they decided to do a different final version of the game that might have been the prototype, and they made the manual ahead of time. That's a possibility too. But make a long story short with that, that's what was really cool for me. And then another game would be Zombie Nation. Not only have I held the record now for almost 10 years, but that's the only game known ever in history on the NES that ends without showing your final score if you beat it.
So it doesn't show you your final score?
No, you have to kill yourself off on the last boss and just assume you got enough points and then just die, and then you get a final score.
Oh, I see. You have to sacrifice.
You have to sacrifice, exactly.
So which game do you think was the most difficult one you played? I mean, it's hard to measure that. If you're good at a game, it doesn't feel so difficult. One where there was a steeper learning curve, maybe. Was it Home Alone, or was that more
no
study?
You know, there were quite a few that I thought I'd never be able to accomplish or take. And I've always done that to myself. I'll make a bold projection on something, and I'll do it, you know, not realizing maybe I can or can't do it. I mean, there's times where I've made bold projections on Facebook, YouTube, on radio stations to people and said, I'm going to do this. And sometimes I didn't even believe I was going to do it. But I figured, what the hell? What do I got to lose? If I don't do it, so what? But I'll tell you something. You know how, like, you have sports people that say, well, you know, they play somebody, right? And they're like, oh, I can't beat this person. You know, I just can't beat them. You know what happened with me was it comes down to games. There's some games that I've just never been able to top, no matter what I do. Battletoads has been very tough for me. It's been a nemesis for years. But if you wanted to ask me what was one of my most difficult games ever, probably, I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 was one of the most difficult max outs I've ever had. But there's Castlevania 3 for a long time, too, was pretty tough. You know, pretty tough, you know, over the years. So there's, you know, those are two. And if you want to ask me another one that was really hard to max out, so that's tough to say. I don't know. Definitely Home Alone was tough. Home Alone was tough, but
Punch-Out, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out seems to get listed on like hard games on the NES. Is it as difficult as people say, or do you just find that quite comfortable, or is it just, I don't know, like I know you've got a score on that, because that's the thing that I find I found just doing this research over the past month prior to this is that because of the competitive game scene, particularly classic one, there's no kind of bona fide body that sort of really has any clear instructions on how to measure these games, or like they have verification methods, but on how to even run tournaments. And I was looking into a tournament that you were in 2015 in Banning.
Right.
And it's a good example of how inaccurate things can be measured.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to go through that if I can, Rudy, just to make the point out now.
I would like to too, because I felt like I did a lot better in that tournament than people gave me credit for. But keep in mind, there's a lot of games I didn't play ever in my life on that, you know.
Yeah. Well, the leaderboard that I was looking at had, I think it was 10 titles on there. There were 10 titles, and I won't go through all the titles. It's not irrelevant, but we'd be talking forever about it. So basically, the official standing was, we'll just talk more focus on you. You came 5th in that tournament, according to them. And the way they'd done the tournament, I didn't realise this until I started looking into it. Because I started going, I started looking at points and just looking down individual names. And it was all scattered all over the place, the way it was sort of laid out.
Right.
And what they basically did was they just accumulated all the points across 10 titles, added them all together, and whoever got the most points won. Now, Hector Rodriguez won that tournament. So I rang him up and I said, is that how it worked? He goes, yeah. And he said, I went in there saying, is this how you really want to do it? This is what Hector said. And they said, yeah, that's how we're doing it. And he said, really? And they said, yeah. And he said, okay then. Now, when I did the medal tally on it, if we went for an Olympic medal tally rather than just looking at overall points, like just putting all the points together, because some games are going to score very high, or some games score very low. Like, you could think of many that do that, but you don't get lots of points, whereas others get a lot more points freely. So the medal tally, there were only four people who would have got 2 golds. And there were another 2 people who got a gold each. Now, if we just went on a gold medal tally, you would have come equal first with 3 other people. That's the medal tally. Because you won 2 titles, and 3 other people won 2 titles as well. Now, then if we go on to medal tallies where we start adding in silver, you would have come equal third because you got 2.
No. Remember, I got 3 first places. Remember?
No, I think it's only 2. I was looking at it's 2. You got 2 and then 1 silver.
No, so, I got double dragon. No, hang on. I got double dragon 2. I got Arknoid, and I got one other one. I got first place, and that was I can't remember now. You'd have to look, but I got three first places.
Unless you can bring it up, I counted 2. Well, anyway, if you could look at that again, that'd be great. We could send it through, but otherwise I've got to spend time sort of bringing it up again now and having to go through it. So it's quite a messy scoreboard. But the point being, well, if it's true that you got 3 gold, then you would have won on a medal tally. If it goes on just the number of medals, there was one person had a total of 7 medals. They had 2 gold, 4 silver, and 1 bronze.
Right.
But as we know, the medal tally focuses on the golds. So if we as I scored it, there were 4 equal first in gold medals, but when you start going to silver and bronze, then you start with finding out. You might want to put it equal third. But the point being is that, and if we give you the benefit,
Gradius, I came in first place, by the way. Gradius, sorry.
Yeah.
Gradius.
Yeah. So the point is that going from 5th to equal third is a big difference, and it demonstrates that often the information, like the way that we address these console games or competitive game in general, is it's a bit clumsy. And that's not being rude to anyone, because everyone here is working at basically in a hobby. Like it's all and I mean this in the nicest way, at an amateur level. Like people aren't paid professionals to play these games, and therefore a lot of the events are hosted by arcades and barcades and other tournaments, and like for instance, the Battle of the Arcades, and they do a fantastic job, but there's no it's difficult to try and assess which games are more difficult and under what conditions do these games be played. And consoles seem to make it even more, I suppose, doubly so because of the accessibility of the games. Like it's much more affordable to get an NES and get lots and lots of games and start playing them.
Right.
And that works to the advantage. Like if you wanted to go and play some other tracks on arcades, then you've got to find the cabinet itself, which becomes rare in its own way.
Exactly.
So anyway, my point being is that how to sort of address these scores like outstanding achievements, and you've got your own personal ones that you're very fond of, and someone else may rate other games as more competitive or they prefer.
Sure.
But like going back, they're not going to put scores up. It's very hard to tell.
Right.
Now, I'm looking at your, and I know this is an arcade game, but it's one you have a score, which you mentioned, Splatterhouse.
Right.
Now, I think there's only 5 people have entered a score on Splatterhouse. Is that correct, or is it more?
It is correct, but keep in mind, Splatterhouse is a very, 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 very rare board. It only got popular in 2012 after I started playing it. It was worthless before that. It was about $50. Now you can go for as much as $1,200.
Yeah. Now the reason I want to draw attention to that is I'm going to talk a little bit about myself here. Is that when I put my world record up, and the only world record I've ever put up, the only score I've ever entered to any leaderboard, the 5-man only score, the tournament setting, then there were only 4 scores on it. Mine was the 5th to go in.
Right.
So, and that was a hugely popular game. So when people often look at this and go, "Oh, there's only 5 scores. How hard can it be?" Well, I think sometimes if the scores are solid, it can deter people from entering anyway. So if it's just difficult. Now, and there are some peculiar world records out there that some people are only competing against each other on because it's just difficult to do. So the message is here. The fact that there's some tracks only have a few titles on it aren't a measure of how easy they are or how difficult. You have to look at them on their own merit. Now, Gallagher, for some people, is a very comfortable game to play. Now, for other people, it's very difficult. Like some of the top players score low on that, whereas the people who do play it very well. Like my scores since in the last 10 years has been doubled. Like it's the world record now is double my score, and the leaderboard is much more populated with stronger players. But it has to start somewhere. So with yours, is there a particular title that you put a score on that was once a very unpopulated leaderboard, but since it's become more populated, like it's really taken off in the time you've been playing?
Besides Splatterhouse, pretty much anything I play all of a sudden becomes popular. It's just the way it is. People say that they don't care about the games I play, or I play these silly games. Like I said before, it's a cop-out and it's just ignorance. But what's funny is that when I start playing a game, they become popular. Splatterhouse got a lot more popular. Home Alone, a few people finally, started playing Home Alone, trying to duplicate what I did. Anytime I've done something, somebody else tries to come along and duplicate it. By the way, yes, I did have 3 golds. It was Double Dragon 2, Gradius, and Arkanoid. By the way, I also set a potential all-time record, too, for 3 minutes playing Double Dragon 2 with a score of over 13,000 points. No, more than 13,000 points. Whatever the score was, it was the highest score ever for a 3-minute span. So that'd be very hard for any speedrunner to beat.
Yeah, if that's accurate about the Arkanoid, maybe if you want to edit this, you can pop up that leaderboard and show people. If that's accurate, mine could be inaccurate. Then if you had a 3 gold medal tally, then that would put you as the winner of that tournament, whereas before you're only coming 5th.
Exactly. I told people that. I said electorally, by winning, just like in an election, you win the states to win the election, not the popular vote, which is, thank God. So make a long story short, I won. I'm winning the most gold medals. That is true, and I said that.
So that's what I'm saying. But when we get to these ideas of comparing games, though, like when people say, "Oh, that game's not worth playing for," or "That's you're the only there's only 2 scores on there, I could do that." It gets more subjective. In a contest, you can look at this, but then again, in a live tournament, people aren't always going to do their personal best. Now, the last year's Score Wars tournament. Again, I said I was only going to mention Gallagher. The winner of that hasn't currently held the world record on the track we were playing. Yet he beat what? And 2 other people have since now taken the world record, but he effectively beat he's beaten 4 world record holders. He was the top player. So on a tournament, you can get very different things. Can go from good to bad very quickly, and they can go from bad to good.
Sure.
But so this is where the collating of all this material gets very, very difficult to measure. So I think that but what I can say is in talking around to other people. Now, some of these people have, they're still involved in the scene one way or another, and they may not even be strong NES players. But for what it's worth, Robert Merchek puts you in the top 10 of NES players of all time, whereas Triforce Johnson puts you in the top 3. Now, I'm assuming Latata might be up there as well. I didn't ask who the other person was. I didn't feel it was that important. Whether he was putting you in the top 3 as in like at the bottom of that 3, or there were 2 other people who were very competitive to you, I'm not sure. So I think that that in all of those scores, when you look at them, and let's try and be objective about it here. First of all, how many scores roughly, just as a round number, are there? How many scores have you got? How many titles on? How many tracks on various titles is there now? Is it like 400 or something?
It's in between 300 and 400, and keep in mind there's some titles that I've done that are not even listed on certain leaderboards, and there might be on another leaderboard or just on a YouTube video. So in between 300 and 400 accomplishments and scores, low scores, high scores, fastest completions over the years, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, let's just say let's give it the benefit of being 400. I think I counted around 400. I will not count it, but when I looked, it seemed to be 400.
Yeah.
Now, when people want to talk about saying, "Oh, I could do that,"
right?
Now,
of course they do say that. Ignorance.
Yeah, people do say that. So if I was to say, "Yeah, I'm going to do that," I'm going to go out and I'm going to match or better every one of Rudy Ferretti's scores.
Right.
I'm going to go do that starting as of Easter this year.
But nobody ever has.
Yeah. Let's say if I did, I would have to, if I wanted to better and I did one game a day, and I managed to equal those scores or better them.
Right.
It's going to take me more than 365 days, obviously,
correct.
Because 400.
And that's doing it one a day if you're good enough to do it one game a day.
That's right. That's one a day good enough. Now, someone might say, well, some of those scores, because they're already good at the title, they might go, well, I could do probably 3 of those short ones in one day. But then they're going to have to hit a day, because what's your longest marathon score?
One score took me 23 hours. I probably could do that a little bit faster for the score that I got now. But again, it's about doing it. It's not about how easy it is or how hard it is. I don't care what the fuck it is. You do anything for 23 hours, good or bad. Doing something for 23 hours takes a lot. Takes a lot.
Yeah. Well, I've spoken to marathoners. They say that the first 12 hours is nothing. He said that the 24 hours, when you get used to doing marathoning, you become adjusted to it. But you've got to do a few to get used to it, and it gets very tiring. But he said once you get past that point, it's just getting, like once you get that next 12-hour gap, you're really in trouble. But he said 24 hours, you feel it. They feel it. You get tired. It gets exhausting. You've been staring at the screen for, like basically 23 hours. That's a full day. So my point is that there's games in there. So what are some other marathons? There must be ones that I suppose they might be 2 hours, 8 hours. They might be hours.
Actually, I do have quite a few. Nothing was more than the 8-hour mark, but I did Halloween for the Atari 2600. That was 5.5 hours. I did Pigs in Space. That was a little bit over 5 hours. That was Atari 2600. I did what else did I do? Another marathon. Trying to think. Jesus Christ. Target Renegade was quite some time too. That was close. That was closing in on quite a few hours for the NES.
And this is my point. It's not necessarily the case that you're going to get this first go. And even if the game was comfortable, like it wasn't the most difficult game, you still have to do it. So I feel that looking through your scores and talking to people, I think for what it's worth, I've been writing articles for the past year, and I've been working on a documentary film, which I hope to start again soon, and that will start in 2010, 2011. So I've been keeping my ears open, to various scores and to what's going on.
Right.
But not in the console area so much. But when I look at the scoreboards and talking to people, you can stake a claim in the idea of being the greatest console player. But like I said, Tom Latata could also do the same. But this has been drawn from the idea that it's the amount of the varied titles across various consoles and maxing out these scores and that. It's not like you're saying, it's not about being, from what I can gather from your conversation, it's not about being the best at a particular game. It's being so solid across so many.
Right, right. It's collectively.
Not talking about doing it.
Collectively, just like here in America, when you have a team that is the best, free throw shooting team collectively, they're number one in the league. They're not all number one free throw shooting. God, I can't even speak right. Free throw shooters. They are collectively the best. One guy might be 95%, another person might be 84%, another person, so they're not all the top guys each. It's collectively as a team they're the best. So I have a great score in 10 games. I have a good score in 50 games. I have an okay score, in 100 games, and I may have a spectacular scores in 30 games, and then unique accomplishments. And when you take all that, that's how they measure people, like top people in sports, top people in Olympics, whatever it is. They take people collectively. Anybody can say, well, I could do what Rudy did, and Rudy did nothing special. But yet when I've called them out and told them to do it, I've lost less than 10% of my scores in the last 16 years. I've regained over 90% of them, which also earned me the nickname Casino. I don't lose very often, and when I do lose, I usually get it right back if I want to. Like I said, Splatterhouse, people are saying, are you ever going to come back? You ever going to get it? If I choose to come out of retirement and I really want to play, the machine is 4 feet in front of me. It's not that big of a deal. I could just get up and go play it anytime I want to and take the record back. But right now...
Sorry, you go. You finish what you were going to say.
Well, right now, though, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm living a life. I'm taking care of a household. I work. I'm doing other things for myself. I'm in the middle of writing a book. Unlike, some people who claim they're better than me. The difference is the books that I'm writing, I can back up the information I'm putting in these books. I can back up the information that are going to be in these books and what they're going to be about. And it's not about controversy. It's about things I've done and things I can do and helping others become better at playing. I figured that was something I had to do,
Yeah. So just what you mentioned a few times now, like you retired from the competitive gaming, that was just you felt you've achieved everything you wanted to do, or you just a bit fatigued by it all?
Well, again, like we promised, not mentioning any names, but all the people that caused shenanigans and all the, irrelevant, cop-out people, people that, did things, ill to get to where they are or who they think they are. I think what can be said about all that is one of the reasons I left the scene last year was I just got tired of the politics that was involved. I got tired of favoritism and lies and corruption, collusion, the whole 9 yards. And I just figured, yeah, I did more than enough to prove myself over the years. I never got the respect I deserved, never made the money that I should have made. And that was because, the people that did have control of those things didn't do things right. If they would have incorporated gambling to classic gaming, we could have been just as big as the NBA, NHL, NFL, rugby, you name it. That's all you had to do was incorporate gambling. Then you could have all kinds of things going on. But they never did it. They didn't do it. They refused to do it. We had favoritism. We had all kinds of stuff. I just got tired of it. I got tired of it.
Was there an opportunity to be including gambling? Like who chose not to? Was it like you've got to have someone who wants to have people betting on? Was it actually often?
Well, no. I mean, at the time, you had people that just wanted to do it as a hobby, didn't believe there could be money made in it. I brought up the subjects. Then it was only about certain people getting paid because for what reasons or whatnot. I'm not going to go into that, like I said, but ill reasons but. If we would have incorporated gambling with certain scoreboards and certain leaderboards over the years, it would have been grand. The problem was there was jealousy, there was collusion, there was corruption, there was favoritism, and that's just the bottom line. It's just life, I mean, I'm like the top guy out there that can do things right and really cared about what I did, and I had the passion. I didn't do it to just become famous or, to get a free lunch or free ride or whatever. I really did it because I enjoyed it, I was the first person in history, and we'll talk about that, about the turbo controller stuff in a minute, but I wanted to reiterate on something, When I came into this scene, I did it for the fun and the passion and the love and did want to become a professional. But it wasn't about the fame or the glory or being fake or using people or anything like that. I wanted to do things right. And sometimes when you want to be the right guy or gal and do things right, people get afraid. They get scared and they get turned off by you because you're not what they want you to be. And me, Rudy J. Ferretti, I've always refused to be what they wanted me to be. I was always my own person. As you could see, my attitude was different. I played the games I wanted. I did the things I wanted to do. I didn't do anything other people told me I should do.
Yeah. I mean, I can say this, and then we'll probably get off this subject and get onto the
Sure.
But just quickly, like in the when I've been doing articles, I talk to various people, and in the community, it's a very small community, but I'm basically told by one person or another not talk to that person. And if I listen to all their advice, I wouldn't be talking to anyone. There is a lot of unhealthy relationships within this classic arcade community, and I'm not going to point out any names because
we promised we wouldn't.
Right. And like I'm making the point now, it's not for me to get involved in any grievance that someone has. Like I'm trying to come to this as the most objective journalistic point of view I can. I am trying, as Littman would say, is treat this as a crime scene. I'm just coming in to look at the facts. Which is why I agreed to have this conversation to begin with. I think there is a stream of scores to look at, with your name attached to it, and there's others who have a stream of scores as well, and it's an opportunity to talk about that. But the other thing is you entered it so early, like 16 years, and there's others who have too, and hopefully after this review goes out, maybe people will look at it.
Well, but the thing is, mostly nobody that claims to be better than me or thinks that they can beat me or whatever have been around since 2002. That's just a fact, let alone usually came in after the King of Kong. But of course, you're right. There are some people that did enter the scene before me that are decent gamers. And when you mention Robert Merzick, he'll even tell you, I was the first gamer in history to fly 3,000 miles. Instead of using a camcorder, I had to prove live that I didn't use turbo control because at the time, my finger speed was just second to none. I mean, if you ask Hector is one of the fastest all-around, finger speeds of all time in gaming. But when I was 23, 24, 25, can't prove it now, but I will say for myself, because Robert will even tell you that my finger speed was so ridiculously fast, he didn't think most people could ever do the finger speed that I did. The only reason I lost the speed run in Jaws was because of a glitch. I would never lose the speed run of Jaws if it came down to finger speed. Nobody was ever even close. When I did 4:19 on the game, 4 minutes and 19 seconds, the only reason it got beat was because somebody used the glitch and then beat it a different way. But if it came down to true skill, finger speed, it'd be very tough to beat me. And especially when I was 23, 24, 25, I don't think even Hector could have beat me back then. And, even to this day,
Well, I did talk to Robert about it, and he did say, he'd seen the video and said, no, I think this is a turbo-enhanced controller. I assume that's just some cheat that people put in or some special-made controller. And he did say, you flew to Brooklyn. I think he was in Brooklyn, and you did demonstrate it. And, he said, I didn't believe it was possible. And I think you're and going by Robert Merchek's word there and your own, but particularly because he verified that, is that there's three I can think of like yourself. The one you mentioned is Hector, and then there's Amado Gonzalez again on Gallagher. Like he received the same attention when he was posting up scores. People thought that's got to be fast shot. And of course, the Gallagher community started slowing his games down. It wasn't. He was just that fast. And even though he can only get 2 shots, he was just sitting in spots because he could just hammer away so fast. He was changing the way the game was being played. You can't replicate his gameplay unless you can actually match his button skills. Same with Hector. You like the way he plays track and field with his both hands on the button like that. It's quite elegant to watch. It's quite amazing. So there are this, and this comes into gaming. And you mentioned you couldn't. That was when you were younger. Not you're old, but you're turning 40. You don't have the agility in your fingers in the same way anymore to do that now. Do you think?
I don't know if I could do it anymore for a couple of reasons. It's not just the agility in the fingers. It's also, do I want to risk my health? When you're pushing buttons that fast and shaking your whole body and everything, and I'm in good shape, I'm in good health, I take care of myself, I don't eat crappy, and I do eat well, and especially when I'm playing a game like Splatterhouse or something that requires a lot of vigorous movement, Splatterhouse is one thing, but do I really want to risk myself playing a track and field game by pushing my hands and fingers as fast as I did with Jaws? I could tell you this. When I was at Robert Merzick's house, and I was in my early 20s, when I was at his house and I did Jaws, I was very shaky afterwards. I pushed those buttons so fast because you got to understand, I didn't have a button technique like Hector did. I actually took my fingers and went, just my fingers by itself. None of this, none of these techniques that Hector knew. I didn't know any of that stuff. I used my friggin' agility and just natural ability from tests I took over the years with finger dexterity and everything else and manual dexterity, and that's what I put to use on those controllers. But I didn't know any kind of, trick or anything. That's what made me so unique. I think that's also why I still hold the world record on pole vault for the what do you call it, for the Nintendo Track and Field 2 as well. Nobody's ever touched that either, because I used to almost max out the friggin' the bar on the damn power bar, with my bare fingers. I couldn't do that today. There's no friggin' way.
I mean, what I'd like to see. I'd like to see, if you were to re-enter into gaming, like I suppose what I'm saying, is there a score that you'd really hate to lose? If someone took it, you'd really like to get it back, or you're just not that fussed. You've done your thing and you're quite content with that.
I'll be honest. Nobody ever likes to lose, but also it's no longer even fun to win. I don't really get the drive to get up and play anymore. I've got my Turbo EverDrive across the way from me here. I got my Harmony cart right next to me over here on my coffee table. I've got all the shit. I've got my Intellivision multi-cart. I've got it all. And I just don't have the drive or the passion to play like I used to. I am very content. That doesn't mean that I'll never shock the world and come out of retirement and go play a game just out of the blue and take a record back, or maybe even do some other kind of crazy accomplishment. Something similar to having the most three-pointers made in history of a basketball game, or the largest margin of victory on a hockey game with no goals scored on the other end, or perhaps coming back from 3 quarters after being down 140 to nothing. Things like that, I don't know. There's been times where I thought about waking up in the middle of the night and playing Double Dribble and taking the record down on that, which is a very popular game on Nintendo, or maybe revisiting Halloween one of these days to see if I could really make the game break. So many things out there, but I just don't know if I have the drive or the care to do it anymore.
Yeah. See, this is sort of on the same subject and kind of not, but what I'd like to see, if it was possible, and I don't know if it's actually possible because there's always going to be disagreement. If you were to talk to number to another, right? Because you respect his gaming skills, and you together worked on a small group of titles or tracks, and said, okay, this is a definitive group. These are the games that and it became its own leaderboard, that people might compete on. Because there's just so many tracks, to reduce it down to a group, that sort of says, hey, if you can actually accomplish this, that's really worthy of acknowledgement. Like I went looking through for top 10, like not top 10, but just, difficult games on the NES, and they'd come, of course I found them in top 10, top 10 list and top 15 and IGN, and this is the thing, you don't know how accurate information they've got, but Contra was voted the number 1 toughest game to beat on IGN. Now I don't know if IGN are responsible, research for that, but that's just what it was voted. You have a Contra score, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. There's these sort of lists out there saying most difficult games, and these are the ones that draw the attention. And I don't know if do you think is it possible to sort of, like the tournament banning, to find a list of as many as, it wouldn't have to be more than 10, but it would make a very solid tournament because they're popular enough, people play them, and they're tough enough games. You'd see a difference in ability amongst the various players. If a list was possible, would you reckon something like that might bring you into competition again, or is it just not possible such a list can be made? I have no idea.
It would depend on who's involved with the tournament. It would depend on who's involved in the tournament, who's organizing it. The reason being because there's people in the scene that, I won't mention names, I don't want to see. And if I would see them, it would be very bad for them. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not somebody that goes around fighting with people. But because of some of the things that were done to me by them and stuff, I don't know how I react or what I would do. And I'd feel sorry.
So part of your withdrawal, just
Yeah.
largely you're like happy with what you've done, you're content, and also the scene's just not fun anymore.
Right. And long story short, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's just not fun anymore.
Yeah. So we probably won't see you putting any scores up in the near future then, Rudy. That's kind of. But you were talking about like because you have your splatterhouse there and stuff. Like you've still kept all this stuff. Like you still play it just casually, or you don't even enjoy playing it just for fun anymore.
No, I mean, you want me to be totally real with you. I'm not going to bullshit you because this is no bullshit, right? No, I don't have a lot of fucking drive. As a matter of fact, in the last 9 months, I think I've played 5 or 10 video games. And when I say I played 5 or 10, that means I played them casually for a little while just to kill some time during my weekend or something like that. That's how bad it is. I think I turned on a couple of TurboGrafx games, a couple of Atari 2600 games, and that's about it. But sometimes I have moments, spurts, sometimes I'll just decide to do something and just surprise myself or whatever, But, I'm, like I said, I've been concentrating on my book. I've been concentrating on my life, my intimate life as well, and things like that, things that are more important. My pets are very important to me. My household. I like to keep my house clean. These are things I find fun that I do. I make crafts. I cook. I clean. I bake. I do everything. I do it all. And people used to say, well, the jack of all trades is the master of none. Then call me the fucking jack of all trades and master of none. I don't care. I do it all. And I enjoy it, I like to detail my car. I detail other people's cars. But, I do a lot of things that I enjoy. And but most importantly, I like to eat right and keep in shape. So it keeps me alive and keeps my mind clear, especially under the stress that I endure with things in my life. Things are not easy, nothing's easy. Even when you have money and you're doing really well, life is not easy. So, you just take things one day at a time,
Well, if you ever did decide to get back in, it'd be for my own because of my own curiosity and because of I'd love to know if you were to put a score up on Gallagher on the NES, if you ever tempted to play something different, just put it out there. I'm just
sure. Why not? I would love to. No,
not a challenge.
I would love to do something like that. Galaga, Ghosts and Goblins. Maybe finally max out Battletoads, take out my nemesis. Maybe if it hasn't been done already, because people have no idea. I don't have a ton of commercial fireworks ready to go in my closet for nothing. Perhaps I already set them off. People don't know. I'm not going to give any information. If there is a new Splatterhouse score, they're not going to know for a while. Perhaps I've already done a celebration in the park with my fireworks array. Perhaps this is already over. Perhaps that 742,000 is obsolete. But they don't know. And that's the best part of it. I hope they keep playing it and keep trying to put a higher score up. And then when they get shocked and it's like, well, Rudy already has a higher score. And that could happen anytime.
So,
difference is I'll do it the right way. What's that?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I feel like like you've made various points and it's as we've gone along here, and it's let's say opening up to you. Is there anything that you feel like haven't brought up or haven't mentioned that you'd like to mention regarding, any titles or scores or things that you want to draw attention to before we before this conversation finishes?
I think the most important thing is whether I'm part of leaderboards or not, people need to really look and dissect of what I've done as a whole to realize why I'm the greatest all-around player of all time. Bold projections, the most perfect scores on one particular console, holding or held a top 5 video game world record at one point or another, doing one-of-a-kind accomplishments that maybe nobody will ever match or beat, holding several console records for over a decade, making me hold the longest console record in video gaming history that's actually legit. beating the best,
What's the longest held score that's legit?
right now the longest documented, proven, video and verified score would be fencing for track and field too. It's the longest held console score right now.
So when was that from? Is that 2002, is it?
2005.
2005.
It'll be 14 years.
Yeah. And can it be beaten?
It cannot.
Theoretically?
Theoretically, it's an apparent max out. One other guy tied it 10 years later.
Yeah. So, and what about? And you said there were some unique ones though. There were ones that were. So what, like some scores you said that were quite.
Well, the 29 loops on, the 29 loops on Target Renegade, the most 3-pointers in any basketball game, over 220 made. That was round ball 2-on-2 challenge. I beat 2 basketball games without ever giving up any points. I came back from 140-0 down in only 3 quarters to take out my opponent. I have ridiculous boxing, knockouts. Some that are just nuts. The times are just crazy, and some of them are not even world records. Breaking, elevator action to make it freeze and make it run out of memory. Almost making Halloween for the 2600 run out of memory. Jaws almost run out of memory. I mean, I'm known for that. I'm known for taking games on consoles and breaking them. I'm just known for that, and I always have been.
There is one score that I wanted to ask, just remembering now, because there's one score you're quite, I'm not proud of, but you have drawn attention to it. You have a completion score, which is the lowest score. Is that what tracks that on again? You have a low score that you.
Castlevania 3. What I did was I figured out a way to beat the game the best I could with 5 lives and doing it with the lowest possible score. So avoiding points, jumping over enemies, dodging the points, doing everything I can, but also at the same time having to survive.
And is it, because that's one I'm confused by. Like I'm not baffled by it, I mean, but is it genuinely more difficult to avoid the points than getting the points?
Well, for Castlevania 3, it kind of is, because what happens with Castlevania 3, you've always got stuff coming at you, and a timer and whatnot. So in order to achieve a low score, you have to avoid points, but also beat the game at the same time, which makes it quite difficult, because now you're trying to get past enemies and foes and whatnot, avoiding the points, trying not to get damaged, right? Remember, every money bag, every time you hit something, you're getting points. So you got to be careful. All you're going for basically are hearts and meat and beating the boss. It's not easy.
So in now Castlevania, and I've not played it, but it has 2 routes through it. There's like you choose a path to go through. You don't.
There's several routes, and there's several routes. And in my opinion, the best way to beat that game with a low score is going to obtain Grant, taking that route. That's what I did. So yeah.
Yeah, but it is a peculiar one. Like I can see the point you're making, but you genuinely feel it is more difficult to dodge the enemies in that than actually go through them.
Right. And that's what it comes down to. That's what I'm so proud of. It's not even about the games I've played. It's the collection and colossal, colorful, career of setting all kinds of unprecedented, scores, records, accomplishments on multiple different, types of ways. 0 score, lowest score, high score. Holding the record of the high score, the low score, and the speed run all at once on one game at one time. These are things that people just don't do. These are just things that people have never done and may never, ever, ever come close to. So
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's the collection. It's the collection of the things I've done. It doesn't matter what game it was on. It doesn't matter when I did it. It doesn't matter if it was beaten. I did it. I did it first. I was the first guy. I was the first person for Lethal Weapon. I was the first person with Home Alone. I was the first person to have the most perfect scores. I was the first guy on fencing.
Yeah.
These are things that are very unique.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like I said, I think that it's those someone has to put a first score up.
That's right.
Someone has to max out a score or equal max, or find their way through a game. And even when someone's done it before, has maxed out a game and the opportunity, which happens now, everyone's old.
You're cutting out. Make sure you're talking into your phone or whatever. You were mumbling a minute there.
Is that better?
Now it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what caused that. There's a bit of feedback now. Anyway, it wasn't before. What I was trying to say was that when someone maxes out or learns from it, you still have to replicate.
Hold on a second here. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. 1 second, guys. I'm gonna have Phil call me right back. Call me right back. Call me back. There's something wrong with your connection. Hopefully it's okay now. Fucking thing. I don't know why it did that. You were perfect, and all of a sudden you started mumbling.
Is that better now?
I hope so.
What I was trying to say was that, when someone goes out and puts a score up, and that's made available to everyone to watch, people can learn from other players, and then from that they can sort of stand on the shoulders of their efforts and push a score up higher. And then if you're chasing someone's score that's been pushed up higher, you too have to then replicate what they've done to achieve what they've set before you. And I don't, it's one of those things. Is it easier to chase a high score, or is it easier to put a score in front? And I often talk about certain sports, where someone might be a 2-point lead and you've got to chase it, which can spur people on. Whereas some people feel it's better to be in the lead, with that, and therefore they, find it more comfortable to actually be in the lead, and leave the people behind. And it's all psychological, of course, which is something we haven't talked about, the psychological aspects of being defeated and what does that mean, or having to chase a score and keeping calm, or, keeping someone's, keeping, mentally calm and not getting anxious. I think there's a lot of good players out there who get, and I've seen them do it, they can get nervy and they get anxious, a lifetime, even going for a world record, and they just can't contain themselves, and they start to lose concentration. So in summary of all of our conversation, I think that the leaderboard speaks for itself. Like, you have maxed out a lot of scores and put scores up and on various consoles and various different games, and like I said before, and to actually equal that, regardless of levels of difficulty on different titles, just to equal it would require a lot of effort. Now, how much, I don't know. And if someone says it wouldn't take much, then they'd have to, like you said, they'd have to do it. The proof is in the pudding. Anyone can say they can do that, then you have to actually demonstrate it. And until people do start demonstrating that, then those records will just still stand until someone can actually equal them or better them. And so, I think regarding the point you're saying, like which is what sort of spurred this conversation on originally, being the greatest console player of the century, it's a very difficult thing to measure. It'd be very difficult to even sort of measure the best one of last year or the last, and as it gets wider, it gets more difficult. But when we look at, but what we can do is try and look at, the various leaderboards, and it'd take a monstrous effort to collate it, but it's certainly, like I said before, the people I have asked have put you in, top 10, top 3, and I could ask another bunch of people and they might put you somewhere else, and be very important. Like someone might put you lower, someone might even put you higher.
Well, I could tell you, I could tell you this: if it wasn't for all the shenanigans and favoritism and lies and bans and all this stuff from certain leaderboards and bringing my morale down with the gaming and stuff and all the bullshit, and also not to mention the other issue with this all, having so many scores to have to worry about defending them all. It's just not worth it. You got to do what you enjoy and play what you enjoy. A lot of these people don't get it. They think like, well, I could do it, but I don't want to. It's a cop out. It's ignorance. Or they lie and say I've done this, but they have nothing to show for it. I mean, I don't care what these people think. I don't care if they like me, hate me, and they know I never have. And that's the thing that they hate about me the most. They knew they could never break me down. You can't really, what can you say about me? You can't, I always said this, they can't get me on my looks, they can't get me on my skill, and they can't get me on my history of life. So let them say what they want to say,
Yeah.
Go out and do it, go out and do it or shut the fuck up,
Yeah. I think that, like people like yourself, or I think you mentioned, or maybe it was earlier in the conversation, or one of the ones where we had technical difficulties, but you mentioned Ali. Like Ali would go out and say all sorts of
and back it up.
Comments, then he would back them up and do it. Sometimes he wouldn't. He'd fail to do it, but
same here. But most of my bold projections have come true.
I mean, I've spoken with various world record holders over the past year, or former world record holders, and I won't get into names and stuff, but one of them in particular had a very sort of coveted score, and he'd held it a few times, and he hasn't played that game for years. He's just felt he's been there, done that. And you can look at a video of me with Josh Houselander from 2010. I say exactly that within basically just a year on having gotten the world record on calendar. I had no interest, and I still had the world record. I was asked, what would happen if someone took it. I'd say I'd congratulate them, and that was it. I had no interest in ever playing it again. The game I'd lost interest in it. Now, that's not an excuse to say that I could get the current world record. I don't believe I could at all. It would take a lot of effort, and I certainly don't have the urge to play. And even if I decided to, I still wouldn't feel confident getting that score. It's a big score. It's a monster score. And that's the thing. It's easy for me to, if I wanted to reverse and say, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that. But I have to actually go and do it. And that's just one game. When you start looking at many, 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 like we're talking literally hundreds, even if they're not at the top, they might be second or third, or they might be equal max out scores. And some of them might be very short games, some are long games. You've still got to do it. So I think, regardless, and again, I don't know the console scene. I'm not even I'm not a strong player. Like in many ways, I shouldn't even be having these conversations. I'm not really a video game player, but I find the community interesting. Quite unique. But I think we got that feedback again.
No, I think we're okay.
You there?
I'm here.
Are you there, Rudy?
I'm here.
That's fine. That's good now. I think that, what I'd like to say is that I think, for someone who entered the scene very early, like 16 years ago before the King of Kong, which did, without a doubt, ignite, a lot of people from their youth who played these games and their teenage years played these games and felt, I'm attracted to this as a film because I enjoyed those games. I'd like to be part of the thing, and they're into it, and there's been multitudes who did.
Of course.
And you've remained there for that time, and I think, and the scores you put up, I say hats off to you. Whether, like you say, you and Tom Vitava, in what you've done you see yourself and him as the sort of two leaders in where your interests lie. And, I'm not going to dispute that because I don't think I have the credibility to do that or have done enough research. But I do feel that there is certainly something to discuss about all those scores you have put up over those 16 years. And I think this conversation we've had is an opportunity to at least air that. But it would require a lot more conversation into those games, and rather than people talking subjectively or just proposing hypotheticals, that they could do that. A lot of them might be plausible, but they'd have to do it. So hopefully the conversation, something positive will come of it, that people might decide to actually maybe chase some of those scores, like your low score on Castlevania 3, and see if it can be done well. That would be exciting for the games scene to someone actually challenge that.
Yeah.
But rather than talking about it, I'd like to see people do it. And I'm not throwing that out there to people they should have to do it, but it's easy to talk, is what I'm saying.
Well, the bottom line, I've done the most accomplishments, the most variety of accomplishments on different consoles. I've held a great score on at least one top 5 seller popular title on every single console that I've played. I have done accomplishments that nobody has ever come close to, that have tried. I've done crazy accomplishments that have lasted over a decade, that can only be tied, cannot be beaten. And I've made bold projections that nobody ever has on multiple occasions that I have backed up over 90%, gotten most of my scores back, rarely ever lose scores, and in the last 16 years, I've lost less than 10%. So, and gained back over 90. So really, what do I have to prove? It doesn't matter, like you said, it's all speculation. You don't want to agree I'm console player of the century or somebody else doesn't. What the fuck do I care? I know how good I am, and so does the world. The problem is people don't get the respect they deserve in this industry because it's biased. There's a lot of, jealousy. There's favoritism, and if you're better than somebody that has a connection or something, they don't want to help you, and that's okay. I just want the new community coming in to realize what the fuck they're getting themselves into and realize it's not all a bowl of cherries. And now the competition's even harder than it ever was. Lots of people left because they couldn't keep up with the competition back in the day. Today, forget it. A lot of people would come in and be last in the first day in the building. It doesn't mean they're not good. It's just the competition's so fucking crazy that you're either first or you're last. It's just a fact.
Oh, look, if I'd looked at the leaderboard for Gallagher now and I was entering, it would have put me off. I would have said, I'm not going to chase that. There's no way. It would put me off. The scores are hugely, on popular titles particularly, they're very high. Ones that are people and even ones that aren't as popular, games particularly like Robotron, it's crazy difficult on the 5-man only track. They are difficult scores, you're right. But I just want to say, hey, Rudy, thanks for the opportunity to conversation. I think it's been good, and I think it's been as objective as we can be. Like we're talking about the scores and how we view them. I'm relying on your expertise on your own scores to sort of to address them as what they have achieved, and like I said, the respect that gamers deserve for their achievements, not anything else, just their objective achievements that have been verified by whichever leaderboard. Again, thanks for allowing me to talk about that, and I think that's important that people keep that in mind in this classic game community, because it is a very small community of competitive players, and it won't take long before you tread on people's toes.
Right.
And I think it's important that people be aware that the real thing is the scores. That's why we know each other. All the people I know is because of through video game. They're not like I live in Australia, as you know. Like most people are talking about, live on another continent. Most of them live in North America, and I would never have met them otherwise. So I met them through gaming, and their personal lives and their beliefs are their own business, But I think when it comes to these games, we can objectively see that, and I think again, I'll mention only that hats off to Triforce. He said objectively, looking at those scores, he said he put you in the top 3. Now, whether he's credible in saying that, I don't know, but he did feel that those scores that you've done and what you've accomplished is
right.
Amazing.
Right.
So thanks again, Rudy. It's been
Thank
good,
you.
and hopefully, there's some, if we get some relevant feedback, be sure to let me know, and if need be in the future, we might be able to do another conversation. Or should you ever decide to chase a game, I'd like to hear about it.
Definitely. We'll talk here in a minute. I'm going to end the stream. I want to thank everybody for coming on, and thank Phil Day, because without him, this wouldn't have been possible. Thank you, Phil.
Cheers, Rudy. Not a problem. Thanks,
Cheers.
mate.